So welcome everyone, and thank you for giving us the time today. As I was introduced as sales manager, I would just want to highlight one thing. I'm still coming from a technical background, so I have a lost identity between being a technology consultant or a sales manager. I know a little bit of both. So what I'm gonna walk you through today is the generic idea that EMC launched so many years ago, and that is around information lifecycle management. As requested, we would love to get all your questions, guys, either written on the chat window, or if you can write them down and then keep them to the end. I'm not gonna torture you today. So my presentation is not that long. We're going to spend together approximately 30 minutes during the presentation, or a bit more than 30 minutes. This will give you enough time to ask all your questions by the end of the session, if possible. So as said, it is about the next generation backup and archive. And for us to move further and to understand why today we are discussing the backup and archive, I'll introduce to you who we are as a division in EMC. I know you guys know EMC. And I will introduce to you what is the difference between backup and archive, and why would we use both terms, and what are the technologies lying behind both terms. I'll give you a hint on some case studies on how the data grow and what is the solution that we can present to our customers. And then finally, we will stop on the difference between the infrastructure that we see at our customer today and the infrastructure that we will see tomorrow, and how can we really work with our customers in order to take them to the next level. So who we are. Today, you know, as of EMC, EMC is an organization that is approximately 70,000 employees around the world today. Among those 70,000 employees, you have approximately 6,000 employees in the region that is EMEA, which includes Europe, Middle East, and Africa, who are really focused around the archive and the backup solutions. So for us as a BRS division, we are really dedicated for those two solutions. Our solutions are developed and the researches happen across 10 research and development centers in the world. We have one of them in our region. And then from a market leadership position, you might be asking, why would I spend 30 minutes listening to Rana today? It is known that EMC today is a market leader in the archive and in the backup space. So and the coming slides, you're going to see slides from IDC and Gartner showing the ranking of EMC. So it's not only our way of looking to it. So we are market leaders in those spaces. And then as I said, those 6,000 employees in this region are here to support you guys, because what we consider as a partner is one of the EMC family. And for us, when we call you partner, we mean it. So we mean that we will go to the customer-facing events together. All the sales call, we will do them together. So you are our extended hand, or we are your extended hand. Whatever way suits you, it does suit us. So this is from division perspective. Now from leadership in this market perspective, and this is again a non-EMC slide. So this is a slide produced by IDC, which is a market researcher, independent market researcher, and it was introduced for Q4 2012. The studies for 2013 are not ready yet, because the year is not over yet. So in the 2012, EMC had approximately 65% of the market share. And as you see on the left-hand side of the slide, in the bottom, you have $2.7 billion. What this means is the addressable market of the backup appliances in the whole world is $2.7 billion. Out of those $2.7 billion, 65% are EMC appliances. And then the coming slide shows you a different perspective, which is how many terabytes or petabytes of data we are backing up and backing up in this slide to our appliances around the world. Also, it's not only in our region. So around the world, all the customers are backing up approximately 1,340 petabytes of data, which means zettabytes of data, right? Out of them, 65% are sitting on EMC purpose-built backup appliances. Why we call them purpose-built backup appliances? This is something you're gonna discover with us, but not in this webinar. It's gonna follow in the coming webinar, which should be next week, hopefully. So today, if we wanna look at the IT world, we need to understand the challenge that our customer is going through. And I know you are all aware of it. And I know that you are seeing it in the different customers you are facing on a daily basis. So I think all of us who are on the call today do have a Facebook account, or most of us. Let me put it this way. Let me be logical. So most of us do have a Facebook account. And most of us, on a daily basis, we receive so many updates, status updates, photos of our friends, maybe invitation to share some games, and I hope you're not spending time on those. I am not. So if you look at the amount of data today, Facebook, and if you take just the example of Facebook, right? So if you look at the amount of data Facebook is addressing today, those are petabytes of data. So this data is created by us and our friends and our family members, etc. So it is created by individuals. And it is the responsibility of the Facebook IT team to keep it safe and keep it available, not to say maybe to share it with other organizations. So this is a very crucial and critical point, that today in our world, the data is growing in an exponential rate. This is a term we used to use in the IT market in the past 3 years, that data is growing exponentially. Today, I don't believe data is growing exponentially anymore. Rather, data is exploding, and I truly mean it. So it is way beyond growing exponentially and in an understandable rate. What the market studies show is that this data is going to grow in 2020 to 35.2 zettabytes. It does mean 3560 petabytes. So it is something very, very big. It's something we can't imagine today as, you know, IT people. Is this a challenge? This is a challenge to our customers, and I'm gonna arrive to the point why it is a challenge. But this is an opportunity for every one of us on this call today. Why it is a challenge to our customers? Because this data is exploding to a point where it is making the life of the IT departments, the IT personnel, a bit of a help, right? So it's very challenging to be able to manage this data, to keep it available and to keep it ready for reading and writing at every moment during the day and even the night. The second challenge that the IT departments are going through, and it is also well known in the business, that every business in the world should be profitable. And certainly after the crisis that the world suffered from, every business in the world is trying to be more profitable. So if we take it on our level, previously, prior to the crisis, we might have been able to sell a solution or a project to one of our customers with a very minimal margin, right? But today, our financial department would really stop us to sell those solutions, very big and complicated solutions, with a very small margin because it's putting the whole business at risk. So if we are asked to be profitable, again, our customers are requested to be profitable. And that's why all the budgets are cut across the departments and across the world and in every business. So today we are hearing this story. The IT department has to manage a very challenging environment, and at the same time, they have to spend less money than they used to spend before. And guess what? They have to adopt also new technologies that will help them cut down the cost, which one of them is the converged infrastructure, a virtual infrastructure, the cloud solution, you name it. And then the fourth thing that is also creating a challenge and the pressure in the IT department is that every government or every, let me say, ruling authority, if you take the central bank in a country, then this central bank is issuing new laws on how every single bank in this country should abide by keeping the data, storing it, managing it, keeping it available for 10 years or 20 years, etc. And those laws are called the compliance and the governance laws. And this is also adding a challenge on the IT departments because this amount of data that is challenging by itself, they are requested to keep it for so many long years, and this is creating more demand for storage and backup in their respective environments. So if we want to look at the difference between backup and archiving, and usually in our part of the world, unfortunately, so many of our customers do really confuse both terms. The customers usually would tell you, I do have a backup site. And by this word, they mean they do have a disaster recovery site. And sometimes they tell you, I'm archiving my data to tapes. And by this, also, they mean they are backing up the data to tapes and keeping it for long years or so many years. So what is really the difference? And how can we approach the customer to make him understand what is the business implication of the backup and what is the business implication of the archive? The archive, or let me go to the backup because it's easier as a first example. So the backup is another copy of data that you put on a different medium, okay? So if you have your data sitting on a SAN infrastructure, whereby you have a storage, centralized storage for all your applications, the backup is another copy for this whole data that you put on tapes or on the VTL, etc. What is the archive then? The archive is the same data that is sitting on your main storage, okay, and that is extracted of this main storage and placed on a different storage for some reasons. What are those reasons? And we're going to discover together in the coming slides what are those reasons exactly. But one of those reasons, we already have seen it previously in my slides, and it can be around the compliance, right? So if we want to really know the difference between archiving to a tape that the customers usually refer to and archiving to an archival platform, the difference is when we archive the backup, it means that we do a backup to a certain medium, whether it is the disk or whether it is the tape, and we retain it for long periods that can go to 10 years or 20 years or even more. And when we talk about online archiving, it means that we are extracting the main data from the storage subsystem and placing it on another storage subsystem and availing it for the applications and the users, regardless of which storage this data is sitting on. Okay? I'm not going to stop today by the solutions of EMC for the backup and archiving. As I promised when I started my talk, those will come in a different or in the second webinar that we will have together. But I just wanted to explain the difference between backup and archive. Now let us try to understand the challenge of the customer environment, okay? So what is it in a customer environment today? How can we detect an opportunity? How can we create an opportunity together? And also at the same time, how can we present a value to the customer? And what are the pain points we need to address at the customer environment in order really to be able to win the customer, let me say, trust, and to give him a solution that will really help him sleep better at night. So if we look at our customer infrastructure today, and certainly the backup infrastructure, what we might see is the following. So the customer would, most of our customers, let me put it this way, most of our customers would have a diversified environment, what we call a hybrid environment. What do I mean by a hybrid environment? A customer might have Windows servers coexisting with Linux servers, coexisting with Unix servers, with some Citrix, maybe virtual infrastructure, or Hyper-V infrastructure, or VMware infrastructure, you name it. So usually the customer has those, or this diversity of operating systems coexisting in his environment. One more thing that adds on the challenge is that some of those servers are connected using the LAN, and some of those servers are connected using the SAN. And for this, there is a very solid reason, okay? What is the solid reason, and why wouldn't every server be connected through the SAN or the LAN, okay? And why today we have the luxury of talking about the LAN that we did not have before. As you know, guys, the LAN today can operate on a 10 gigabit per second speed. The SAN environment is operating at 8 gigabit per second speed. Previously, the LAN was operating maximum a 1 gig speed, right? Or bandwidth, whatever you want to call it. So previously we had the challenge that if the customer wants a better performance, he should really buy SAN switches and connect his very critical servers to those SAN switches, and from those SAN switches to the, let me say, consolidated storage, right? So in this case, or let me say in today's case, this scenario changed a little bit. How did it change? So the change in this scenario happened as follows. Due to the LAN being much more advanced and having a higher speed, some of the servers that are, let me say, not very demanding on the bandwidth perspective, or that do not have a very high amount of data sitting on them, can really be connected to the infrastructure using the LAN switches or the LAN ports, and whereby I'm talking about the NIC cards that will be used to communicate the data across the infrastructure to the storage. Other servers which are critical and need more performance might still be connected to the SAN infrastructure, and then from the SAN storage, or let me say from the SAN switches to the SAN storage. Now, let us look at the cost, at the financial implication at the customer, and let us understand why we still have those two environments coexisting and co-living together. Most of our customers, to be frank with you, are maximum today operating a 1 gig LAN, okay? Unfortunately, in our area, in our region, we still do not have customers who are operating 10 gig LAN. except those are very big telco customers, or a very big bank or a regional bank maybe. So from a financial implication, if a customer decides to connect a server A through the LAN, the only needed thing is an NIC card. But in all cases, the NIC card is needed because if you don't connect the server to the LAN, the server will never get an IP address, etc. So really, from a financial implication, this does not harm the customer. Now, if we do have a very critical server that is connected through the SAN, what do we need to connect to the SAN? We need the fiber channel cards, which we call the HBAs, and you guys are very comfortable with them, right? So those are extra financial investment that the customer needs to do on his infrastructure in order to be able to connect through the SAN. And that's why, till today, we have, let me say, a diversified infrastructure like you're seeing on the slide between LAN and SAN, and the customer, not all the customers are connecting the servers through the SAN, and not all the customers are able to connect and route the data through the LAN, so both environments are coexisting in a data center. Now let us go down one level to the systems, right? So if we want to back up the servers that are connected either to the LAN or to the SAN, it means we need to communicate the data sitting on those servers to a certain device. Previously in this world, the only way of backing up the data was to write the data to a tape through a tape library, or what we used to call in this market the robot. So a robot is very good, a tape library is very good. The challenge with the tape library is, first of all, the limitation on the performance. So every tape drive can write a certain amount of, sorry, I have a comment that someone is not seeing my slides. So let me carry on with you guys while I am responding. So the tape library has a challenge that is the limitation of the performance itself. Every tape drive can write a certain amount of data and cannot really write more than this data to the tapes. So in order to solve this challenge, the only way to really address this challenge is to add more tape drives. Then what we run through is that the tape drive or the tape library has a maximum limitation or a maximum capacity of tape drives inside. So what we would need is to add more tape libraries in the environment, and this is creating another layer of, let me say, challenge in managing those environments. In order to solve this challenge, the market, the backup market, or the backup, let me say, strategist, came up with an idea called the VTL. The VTL previously was a storage subsystem in which you have normal, let me call them normal drives, normal SATA drives, and then those SATA drives are able to present themselves to the backup server as tape drives, right? The problem and the challenge is related to the mass. So let us do a simple calculation. If the customer has 10 terabytes of active data that he needs to back up, it means that he needs 10 terabytes of SATA drives sitting on the VTL. But guess what? A customer never keeps one copy of his data. Usually the customer keeps copies for 3 months or for 6 months, not to say a year or 2. So if you take the example of 3 months, it means 90 days. And if the copy every day, let me put it this way. If the customer is doing only one full backup every week, and then incremental backups every day. And let us assume the incremental backup is only 1 terabyte. So by the end of every week, this customer would be storing 6 terabytes as incremental, and then the last backup, which is the full backup, would be 10, and this makes it 16 terabytes of data. And over the 3 months, you have 12 of those 16 copies of data stored on your VTL, which makes the VTL go beyond and far beyond the 100 terabyte of data. There is no possibility for any CIO or IT manager to convince his management to invest 10 times or 20 times on the VTL the amount of money that he or she is investing on the main data, which is the main storage subsystem. So the only solution was to use this VTL as a staging area. Let us call it a staging area. What do we mean by staging area? It means that the customer will write the first backup to the VTL and then offload this backup to the tapes and carry on doing the tapes as usual. And if he needs to restore ever, he will restore directly from the VTL. That makes the restore faster. But if he needs to restore an old data, he will always need to go to the tapes. And guess what? The management of the tape is a problem by itself, because every time the tape is full, the customer needs to ship this tape to an off-site location where he's going to store the tapes in safe boxes or cabinets or whatever this customer calls them. He needs to label the tapes and store them based on the date of extraction from the tape library. And the problem happens if the data is lost on the main site, then the amount of effort that the customer needs to do in order to go to this off-site location and collect the tape and bring the tape back to the main site is an endless waiting time, and this does a major impact on the customer business. Why do we talk about a major impact on the customer business? Because the customer is really limited or is really challenged based on two measurements. One of them is called the RPO and the second one is called the RTO. The RPO is the recovery point objective and the RTO is the recovery time objective. So even if the customer is not losing much data, if anything wrong happens to his main site, the time he needs to wait in order to go to this bunker site or the off-site location, bring the tape or identify the tape first, and then sign the clearance sheets, and then bring the tape back to the main site and restore the data, this time by itself is so challenging because the applications are down and his main business is down. And we just said a few minutes ago that the customer is in the business of making money and is in the business of being profitable. So it means that he's not being able to generate money or being profitable for so long time. And this is what will help us identify an opportunity or create an opportunity in this environment. So in the case study we are going to see together, it is exactly what we've been discussing in the previous slide. This customer has a 20 terabyte of database and a 40 terabyte of files, and he has two primary storages. So one of them has the 2040 and the other one has 4020, which makes the total amount of data 120 terabyte of active data. Okay, this company has a policy to abide by. So this policy is to retain a full copy of data every week for 3 months, and then to retain only one copy of the incremental data that is generated during the week. So we have 7 copies of incremental data and then 12 copies of full data. The change rate of the data in this company is approximately 30%, which generates 40 terabytes of data per every incremental backup. So if we want to really abide by the data retention policy or the backup retention policy in this company, it means that this company needs to avail 1.7 petabyte of data in order to abide by the storage, or let me say the backup retention policy. Now we move one step further. This company also has a DR for the storage, right? So exactly the same amount of backup is produced on the DR side. So you have the 120 terabytes of data sitting on the DR storage subsystems, and then they are creating backup in the DR because it is an active DR. If anything happens to the main side, they need to be operational from the DR for a very long time. And this is putting them under the challenge of being forced to manage 3.6 petabytes of data on daily or yearly basis. What does this mean? This means we are having an avalanche effect. So I'll move back to the previous slide. So the 120 terabytes of data that is really critical and important for this company is costing them 3.6 petabytes of data investment in order to be able to avail their data at every point in time. So by this we mean it is an avalanche, let me say, effect, because the data, though it is small, 120 terabytes, when we start protecting it and securing it, it will land at a very big capacity, which is the 3.6 petabytes of data. How can we address it, and how can we do it differently? So what we need to do differently, first of all, is we need to think in a more clever way, which is archiving. The archiving will allow us to save on the data that needs to be backed up. So when we do archiving, we will be, as I said first, we will be taking an amount of this data from the main storage subsystem to the archiving storage. And this data, whenever we are taking it, it does not need any further backup. So it's only, it only needs archiving. And then if we move further, then we need to think about a new technology also that will help us reduce the amount of data, which is called the deduplication. In those slides, I'm not going to cover the deduplication as a technology because we're keeping it for the detailed discussion on the amount of data that we need to store. So now, if we want to really look into things, let us look into how can we classify the data and what can we understand by the data classification. This slide that you are seeing now is exactly what we see in the customer environment and that we've been discussing previously, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. So it is the SAN environment where you have the tape libraries right now connected to the storage. You might have a LAN connected storage, not only a SAN connected storage, and then your servers and extracting your tapes to a file location, etc. What is the infrastructure of tomorrow? The infrastructure of tomorrow is most probably a consolidated infrastructure and most probably also a virtual infrastructure, or the customers are going towards virtualization. Why? Because they need to cut on the cost of their IT departments. And then, as you can see in this slide, you have On the left-hand side, the archiving platform, which is very important, and you're gonna see it in the coming slides. And then on the right-hand side, you have the VTL, or the possibility today to do a full compliant backup without referring to tapes and without creating those islands of backup. What is the information lifecycle management? Fine. I've been defining it, I've been talking about it or around it, but you really need to understand how can you seize this opportunity and how can you convince your customers. So every email we receive today is a very critical email. But this very same email, if we think about it after 2 months' time, yes, it is important. We won't be able to delete it, but it will lose from its importance. Whom of us guys will come to the office in the morning? I'll give you an example of myself. So I was flying yesterday from Tanzania to Dubai, landed early morning this morning. I'm in the office since the morning. Imagine that when I reached the office in the morning, I decided to read all the emails I have received 1 year ago on the 22nd of August. None of us do this, right? But can I really delete those emails? For sure, I guarantee to you that I cannot delete those emails for the simple reason that in those emails we might have very important and critical requests from the management, from a partner, a pricing for a customer, a pricing for a project that is very crucial and that we still did not close, or even we closed, but we need to verify the details of the contract, and then hence we cannot really delete those evidences. Okay, I'm telling you that the email lost from its importance. I'm no longer reading those emails, but I cannot delete them. And this does apply on every data in the customer data center. So whether you are talking to a telco, whether you are talking to a bank, whether you are talking to a shipping agency, so all those transport companies, if you are talking to an oil and gas customer, no matter what industry you decide to work with or to work in, the same applies to everyone. Let us take the telco as an example. All the call registry are very important and very crucial for the telcos till they generate their bills. So once they send the bills to us and we pay our amount, we're fine. Or they are fine. The data become less important. They will never delete it though. So what do they need to do about it? What they need to do about it is they need to delete it from the main storage subsystem and move it to another storage subsystem, which is called the archive. And once it is moved to the archive, as you can see here, it will be online, it will be always accessible, and they can reclaim the main storage that they have been investing in, which is a very performance storage for the rest of their data and the rest of their application. This is the information lifecycle management strategy, and this is the strategy that our backup and archiving policies really do turn around or go around. Okay, one more slide to go. If we want to really look on how we do this, how can we really approach the archiving versus the backup, the first thing you need to think of is how to archive, how to move this data that is no longer active from the active storage to the archiving storage. And then once it is on the archiving storage, you just forget about it. It will no longer be backed up, okay? So it will fall outside the backup window and the backup infrastructure that you need to invest on. For the coming webinar, you're gonna hear the EMC terms. That's why I've included this final slide for you today. So you're gonna listen more about the solutions of EMC, what are they, and which solution fits in which, let me say, slogan. What does fall under the backup, what does fall under the archive, and how both solutions work together in order to leverage the information lifecycle management for every customer. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye.